I booked the Airbnb because I needed somewhere cheap and quiet for a week. Work had me traveling between small towns, and hotels near the highway were either full or overpriced. The listing showed a simple place, a detached house on the edge of a fading neighborhood. The photos were plain but clean. White walls, gray couch, narrow kitchen, a bedroom with a low bed and a window that faced a line of trees. It claimed to be an entire place. No shared spaces, self-check-in, flexible cancellation. Hundreds of reviews, most of them short and positive. I did not look closely at the negative ones. I never do. I arrived just before dusk. The street was narrow and uneven, patched with old asphalt. Some houses were occupied. Others were empty, windows boarded or dark. The Airbnb stood at the end of the block. The yard was small, grass cut recently but uneven, like someone rushed through it. The porch light was on even though it was still light outside. That stood out. I unlocked the door with the code and stepped inside. The air smelled used. Not dirty, but lived in. A mix of old cooking oil, fabric softener, and something faintly sweet that I could not place. The lights worked. The living room looked exactly like the photos, except the couch cushions were arranged differently. One was pressed down more than the others, as if someone had been sitting there recently. I assumed the cleaner missed it. My shoes stuck slightly to the floor near the kitchen. The trash can was empty, but the liner was knotted, not fresh. The fridge was cold and humming. Inside were condiments, half-used bottles, and a carton of eggs with 3 missing. The expiration dates were recent. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the shelves, trying to convince myself that this was normal. Hosts sometimes left things behind. Maybe this was their personal place between guests. The bedroom was at the back. The bed was made tight, corners tucked in, but the pillowcases smelled faintly of sweat under the detergent. The closet door was open. Inside were empty hangers and a single gray hoodie folded on the floor. I picked it up. It was warm. I set my bag down and checked the bathroom. The mirror had streaks that were not water. The shower drain had hair in it, dark and short. The towels were clean, but one was damp. I stood still and listened. The house made small sounds, pipes settling, the fridge clicking, nothing else. I told myself I was tired and overthinking. I locked the door, deadbolt and handle, and unpacked. I wiped down the counter with a paper towel. I washed my hands longer than usual. When I sat on the couch, I chose the cushion that was not compressed. That night I slept lightly. Every sound woke me. Around 2 a.m., I heard a soft thump from somewhere inside the house. It was not loud, more like a drawer closing carefully. I waited, holding my breath. Nothing followed. I did not get up to check. I stayed where I was until morning. In daylight, the place felt different, less heavy. Sunlight came through the trees and hit the kitchen floor. I walked the house again, slower this time. In the hallway, I noticed a small door near the floor, painted the same color as the wall. I assumed it led to crawl space storage. It was locked. I left for work and came back in the evening. The porch light was on again. Inside, the air smelled fresh, like cleaning spray. The couch cushions were rearranged. This time I knew how I left them. The gray hoodie was gone from the closet floor. I checked the door lock. It was still locked. The windows were closed. No signs of forced entry. I stood in the middle of the living room, heart pounding, and tried to think logically. Maybe the host came by to restock supplies. Maybe they had another code. It was their property. I checked the app. No message. No notice of entry. The house rules said no unannounced visits. That night I did not sleep. I lay in bed with the lights off, listening. Around 1 a.m., I heard movement again, closer this time. The sound of bare feet on the floor, slow and careful. The air shifted like someone passing through a room. I did not move. I kept my eyes closed and focused on breathing. Something brushed the edge of the bed. Not enough to shake it, just enough to know it happened. I felt pressure on the mattress near my legs. Then nothing. After a long time, the house went quiet again. In the morning, there was a new mug in the sink. I knew it was new because it had a chip on the rim that the others did not. The sink was wet. I packed my bag. I took photos of everything. The fridge contents, the damp towel, the small door in the hallway. I tried the handle again. It did not budge. Before leaving, I noticed something I missed before. A thin line cut into the wall behind the couch, barely visible unless the light hit it right. I pressed on it and a panel shifted inward. Behind it was a narrow opening, just wide enough for a person to stand sideways. It smelled stale and warm. I did not look further. I left the house and drove to a cafe with strong lights and people around. My hands shook as I contacted support. I explained everything in detail. They canceled the rest of my stay and refunded me. They suggested I find another place and assured me the listing would be investigated. I checked into a motel that night. I slept with the lights on. 2 days later, I got an update. The host had been contacted. They claimed the space behind the wall was an old utility access, sealed years ago. They denied entering during my stay. Support told me local authorities had been notified after another guest reported something similar. They could not share details. A week later, I saw a news article. A man had been arrested in that neighborhood. He had been living inside walls and crawl spaces of short-term rentals, entering rooms when guests slept, leaving before morning. He had access codes from a former cleaning job. The article mentioned hidden panels and narrow passages built during renovations. I recognized the house from the photo. I deleted the app from my phone that night. I stopped booking entire places. I stopped trusting photos. I still wake up sometimes when I hear a floor creak, waiting for a pressure that never comes. I rented the place because I needed quiet and because it was cheap for the size. It was a small 2-story Airbnb on the edge of a dying town. The kind of place that once had a mill and a school and now only had a gas station and a bar with covered windows. I was burned out from work and wanted a week where nothing happened. The listing promised privacy, self-check-in, and no neighbors close enough to see the house. The photos showed clean rooms, white walls, and wide windows facing trees. It looked plain in a way that felt safe. I arrived in the late afternoon. The road narrowed into gravel for the last mile. The house sat back from it, half hidden by tall grass and untrimmed bushes. The key was in a lockbox. The door opened without resistance. Inside, the air smelled used. Not dirty, just lived in. I noticed it right away but explained it as old wood and closed windows. The living room furniture was different from the listing photos. Same layout but older. The couch sagged in the middle. The coffee table had deep scratches that didn't look decorative. On one wall, there were faint marks where frames had been taken down and put back up many times. The place was clean but not fresh. I put my bag down and walked through each room, the way I always do. The kitchen had dishes in the cabinet that didn't match. Some were chipped. One plate had dried food on the bottom, like it had been put away without being washed. The fridge was empty except for a bottle of water and a bag of ice. The freezer had frost built up thick around the edges. The bedroom upstairs had a mattress that dipped on one side. The sheets were clean but thin and smelled faintly of sweat under the detergent. The bathroom was where I paused. The mirror had tiny black specks around the edges, like mold trying to come back. The vent above the shower cover was loose, hanging at a slight angle. When I pushed it back, it didn't sit flush. I told myself to stop inspecting and relax. That first evening was quiet. Too quiet. No traffic noise. No distant dogs. No wind in the trees. The silence pressed in once the sun went down. I cooked a simple meal and ate it at the counter. The lights flickered once, then steadied. I went to bed early. I woke up around 2 a.m. because I felt watched. Not a sound, just the sense of awareness that pulls you out of sleep. I lay still and listened. The house settled, wood popping as it cooled. Somewhere above me, there was a slow scrape, like something dragging lightly across the surface. It stopped. I waited. Nothing else happened. I fell back asleep. The next morning, I noticed the bathroom door was open. I was sure I had closed it. The vent cover had shifted again. One corner hung lower than before. I pushed it up harder this time. It stayed. I spent the day hiking and came back tired. When I opened the door, The smell inside was stronger, stale and warm, like someone had been breathing the air all day. The upstairs window in the bedroom was unlocked. I hadn't opened it. I locked it and checked the rest of the house. Everything else seemed the same. That night I heard movement again, not settling. It had a pattern. Slow steps, careful, above the ceiling. They moved from one side of the house to the other, then stopped. My chest tightened. I lay there and counted my breaths until morning. On the third day, I started noticing small changes. A chair pulled out slightly from the table. The shower curtain pushed to one side instead of centered. The lockbox outside had been opened and closed again. The numbers were smudged, like someone else had used it recently. I checked the listing again. Still said entire place. No shared spaces. No host on property. I looked for reviews mentioning noise or privacy. Most were short and vague. A few said the house had character. One said it felt lived in. I tried to message the host through the app but got no response. That afternoon, I found a thin layer of dust disturbed along the baseboard in the hallway. It looked like something had been dragged lightly through it. The trail ended at the wall near the stairs. I knelt and pressed my ear against it. I could hear faint movement inside, like shifting weight. I backed away and told myself it was animals in the walls. Mice, raccoons, something like that. The house was old. The woods were close. It made sense. I repeated that until it almost worked. That night, I didn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard the sound again, clearer now. A slow slide, then a soft thud. It came from directly above the bedroom. I sat up and watched the ceiling. A fine line of dust fell from a seam. Then another. The vent cover rattled. I got out of bed and stood in the hallway. The attic access was a small square panel near the top of the stairs. It had scratches around the edges that I hadn't noticed before. The panel was slightly misaligned, like it had been opened recently and not set back right. I pulled a chair under it and climbed up. My hands shook. When I pushed the panel up, warm air poured down. The attic was low and unfinished. Insulation lay uneven, packed down in places. A narrow path ran through it, pressed flat by repeated use. The smell was stronger up there. Sweat, old clothes, something sour. I followed the path with my phone light. In the far corner, I saw a mattress, thin, stained. Next to it were food wrappers, empty bottles, and a portable light plugged into an extension cord that ran down through a hole in the floor. I stood there long enough to understand what I was seeing. Someone had been living up there. Recently, probably still. I backed out slowly, closed the panel, and went downstairs. I grabbed my bag and keys. When I opened the front door, I noticed the deadbolt was unlocked. I always locked it. My stomach dropped. As I stepped outside, I heard movement above me again. Faster this time. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove until my hands stopped shaking. Later, after I was safe, I contacted the platform and the local police. They found a man hiding in the crawl space between the attic and the walls. He had been renting the house out under a fake name while living inside it, using the access panels to move around when guests slept or left. He had been doing it for months. The listing disappeared. The house went dark. I still think about the nights I slept there, about how close someone was, how careful they were to stay unseen. Nothing supernatural happened in that house. That was the worst part. Everything that did happen was possible, planned, and real. I booked the place because it was cheap and available the same day. I had been driving since early morning, hugging the coast, stopping only for gas and bad coffee. The listing sat on the edge of a small Oregon town that looked half asleep even in daylight. The photos showed a low house with gray siding, a gravel drive, plain furniture, clean floors, nothing personal. It looked like a place meant to be passed through. That was what I needed. 2 nights, a shower, a bed, then north again. The road to the house left the main strip and narrowed fast. The ocean disappeared behind trees and low hills. Fog hung in pockets, thick enough to dull sound. The house sat back from the road, not far, but far enough to feel separate. There were no neighboring houses close by. The yard was bare except for wet grass and a few stones pushed into the ground. The key was in a lockbox. I let myself in just after sunset. The first thing I noticed was the cold. The heater was running. I could hear it kick on and off, the low hum steady, but the air felt wrong. It was not the clean chill of coastal air or the sharp cold of winter. It felt stale, heavy, like the cold had soaked into the structure and stayed there. The floors were clean but dull, worn down in places where people had walked the same path for years. The smell inside was faint, a mix of dust and something metallic, like old tools left in rain. I dropped my bag near the couch and walked through the rooms. The living room held a small table, a lamp, a couch that had been cleaned too many times. The kitchen was narrow. The fridge hummed. The bathroom was basic, towels folded tight, no extra supplies. The bedroom sat at the back. The bed looked fine. The sheets smelled like detergent. Everything matched the listing photos until I stepped back into the hallway. Halfway down the hall, across from the bathroom, was a door I had not seen online. It did not fit the rest of the house. The other doors were older, painted white, chipped around the edges. This one was darker, solid, with a smooth surface. The lock stood out most. It was modern, metallic, the kind you would expect in an office building or a new apartment, not in a small coastal rental. It sat clean and new against old trim. I stood there longer than I meant to. The heater clicked on again, pushing warm air that never seemed to reach the hall. I told myself it was a storage room. Owners often locked closets. It was not my business. I unpacked and tried to settle in. That night, sleep came in pieces. The house made noise as it cooled and warmed, wood shifting, pipes ticking. Sometime after midnight, I woke up fully alert. The air felt different, thinner, like the pressure had changed. My ears felt full, the way they do when a window opens fast. The heater was quiet. The room smelled faintly metallic again, stronger than before. I sat up and listened. No footsteps, no wind. I got out of bed and walked through the house barefoot, checking each window and door. Every lock was tight. The front door had not moved. The back door was sealed. No window was open. The air still felt off, like something had pulled it through the house and then stopped. When I passed the hallway, I noticed the door. I did not plan to touch it, but I did. The surface was warm, not just warmer than the hall, warm like it had heat behind it. I held my hand there longer than made sense, waiting for the feeling to change. It did not. I stepped back and went to bed. I slept lightly until morning. Daylight made the place look smaller, less threatening. The cold remained, though. Even with the heater on, the air stayed heavy. I made coffee and noticed marks on the floor near the hallway. At first I thought they were old scratches. Then I looked closer. The marks were scuffs, curved and uneven, like something heavy had been dragged. They ran along the floor and stopped right at the base of the locked door. The edges of the scuffs were clean, not worn down by time or cleaning. I checked the rest of the house. There were no matching marks anywhere else. No sign of recent work. No boxes. No tools. Just those scuffs leading one way. I sent a message through the app asking about the door. The reply came late in the afternoon. The host explained it was private storage and not part of the rental, and said it should be ignored. There was no apology for not mentioning it in the listing. No detail beyond that. I tried to stay. I told myself I was tired and reading into things. I went for a walk through town, along the edge of the water, watched fishing boats move slow through the fog. When I returned, the house felt the same. Cold, quiet, still. I packed my bag again, slower this time, paying attention to every sound. Before leaving, I walked past the hallway one last time. I did not touch the door again. I did not need to. I could feel the warmth from a distance now, faint but there, like standing near a wall with pipes running through it. I loaded my car and pulled out of the drive. As I turned toward the road, something on the side of the house caught my eye. A small vent sat low on the exterior wall, right where the locked door would be inside. The metal cover was bent outward, not broken, not rusted, bent like pressure had been pushed from within. The edges were scraped. The opening behind it was dark. I did not stay to look longer. I drove until the house disappeared behind trees, then kept going. Later, at a rest stop, I looked up public records on my phone. The house had changed owners twice in the past 5 years. There had been a renovation permit filed recently for interior work, listed as storage improvement. No inspection notes were available. The explanation came together slowly, without drama. The door led to a sealed room that had been added or modified. The modern lock kept it separate. The warmth came from equipment or a person inside, generating heat that leaked through the walls. The pressure change came from air being moved through a vent system that did not belong in a normal storage room. The scuff marks came from something heavy being shifted across the floor. The bent vent suggested force, not neglect. I did not report the listing. I did not message the host again. I left the town and did not look back. The fear did not come from not knowing. It came from knowing enough. Whatever was behind that door did not belong in a short-term rental. It did not belong near a bed meant for strangers passing through. I slept in my car that night at a crowded stop with lights and noise and people moving around. I slept better there than I had in that house. I found the apartment while scrolling through listings on a long road trip through Arizona. I needed a place to stop for 3 nights. Somewhere quiet, somewhere private, and this one looked perfect. It was a small apartment attached to a larger house, set back from the road with its own entrance. The photos showed a tidy, minimal space. A kitchenette, a bed, a small table, and a bathroom with clean tiles. Everything was neutral, everything looked functional. The host had emphasized the security, especially the digital keypad lock on the door. He sent extra instructions, stressing how the lock was modern, how it would keep me safe. It seemed reassuring. I liked that. After hours on the highway, it felt good to think someone had made safety a priority. The neighborhood was quiet, dry, and sun-baked during the day, the kind of place where the horizon stretches flat and long. The street had a few houses scattered, mostly single-story, with tumbleweeds in the yards and the distant hum of traffic on the highway. I arrived around dusk. The sun was still out, burning orange against the red earth, and the apartment seemed peaceful. I parked, checked the keypad, typed in the code, and stepped inside. The lock clicked firmly, the door swung open, and I felt the kind of relief that comes from knowing you won't have to find a motel in a town that doesn't really have one. The first night, I went through the usual routine. Showered, ate some snacks I'd packed, and turned off the lights. Sleep came in fits. Around 2 in the morning, I woke to a faint beep, just a single tone. My eyes adjusted to the dim light. The door was closed. The lock looked fine. I figured it was a quirk of the keypad, maybe a low battery warning. I pressed the numbers again to make sure, and it locked normally. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I drifted back to sleep. The second night, the beep came again, exactly at 2 a.m. This time, I grabbed my phone and opened the Locks app. The activity log showed a manual reset at 2:04 a.m. I hadn't touched it. The reset time matched almost exactly with the beep. My stomach sank. I checked the door. Locked. Nothing had moved. I tried the numbers. It responded normally. I scrolled the activity history. The previous night, the same reset. Same time window. I told myself it was a glitch. The host had mentioned glitches. Some locks reset automatically under certain conditions. It was the kind of explanation I wanted to believe. By the third night, I could not ignore it. I decided to stay awake. The apartment was silent, too quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed with a small lamp on, the shadows of the room stretching oddly against the walls. My ears caught every creak and hum. The air conditioning cycling, the pipes in the building shifting, the faint whistle of wind outside. 2 a.m. arrived. I heard something that made my heart tighten. Footsteps outside the door. Slow, careful. The kind of walk someone takes when they do not want to be noticed. My eyes stayed fixed on the door. The lock beeped right after. I held my breath. The handle did not move. The footsteps paused. I waited. They faded down the porch and stopped. The silence that returned felt heavier, filled with the knowledge that someone had been outside the door while I slept. I did not try the lock that night. I did not touch the door. I kept the lights on and stayed awake until dawn, staring at the keypad as the sun crawled into the apartment. When the light filled the room, I noticed something that made me stomach turn. Fingerprints on the keypad. Not mine. They were oily, pressed hard, smeared in a way that suggested someone had pressed the buttons forcefully. I did not need to guess how long they had been there. The smudges were fresh. I packed immediately. I left without checking anything else. I did not leave the apartment the way I had come in, walking slowly to savor the neighborhood or even look at the street. I got in the car, started the engine, and drove without stopping until I was well out of town. Later, curiosity made me look up the listing again. It was gone. The apartment no longer existed on the platform. There was no trace. The host's account had disappeared. I thought about the patterns, about the lock, the fingerprints, the timing. There were only a few possibilities that made sense. Someone had access to the keypad. Someone knew my presence and schedule. They had been watching. The lock reset itself while I slept, likely to give someone the ability to test or adjust access without leaving evidence on the door itself. The footsteps, the pressure outside the door, they confirmed it. This was not random. It was planned, timed, and repeated. I never had any idea who the person was or why they targeted that apartment. The physical evidence was minimal, but it was enough. It explained the beep, the resets, the fingerprints. It explained the weight in the air, the sudden tension when I was alone. I told myself I had been lucky, that I had sensed it in time, that I had left before anything worse happened. In the days that followed, I avoided Airbnb for a while. I stopped taking rentals in isolated units attached to other homes. I learned to read listings for hidden details. Separate entrances, unusual security measures, locks that could be remotely accessed. I realized how easy it would have been for someone to use a glitch to enter quietly, to slip in unnoticed, to be watching without leaving clear evidence. The knowledge stuck with me, sharpened into a kind of cautious paranoia. The story has a clear ending in my mind because the truth was simple. I left, I avoided the danger, and the opportunity for harm ended when I walked away. The apartment, the host, the listing, all of it vanished, leaving only the memory and the evidence I carried with me. The lock had not failed. My perception had not failed. The person who had been outside the door did not have a chance to act while I was awake. That, in itself, was the resolution. The danger had been real, the risk immediate, but leaving, staying alert, and noticing the details was what kept the experience contained. I walked away, and the house, the host, the silent intrusion, remained behind, unresolved for anyone else who might have stayed there. I never returned. I rented the farmhouse because I wanted solitude. I had been driving all day through Pennsylvania backroads, past rolling hills and stretches of corn that had been cut for the season. The listing promised the entire house, no neighbors, quiet. Sounded perfect. The directions took me down a gravel lane, past an old wooden fence leaning slightly, until I reached a 2-story farmhouse with faded white paint and green shutters. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the porch. Everything looked still, untouched, the kind of place that felt separate from time. I stepped inside through the main door. The air smelled faintly of wood polish and dust, like the house had been cleaned but rarely used. The rooms were simple. A living room with a couch and a small table, a kitchen with a stove and an old wooden cabinet, a staircase leading upstairs. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. I set my bag down and started to look around. The fridge caught my attention almost immediately. It was not empty as I had expected. Milk in a plastic jug, cream still cold, a half-made sandwich wrapped in foil. The expiration date on the milk was 2 days away. I assumed the cleaner had forgotten to remove it. I set my own snacks on the counter and closed the fridge door. The rest of the kitchen smelled faintly of bread, of something perishable. I thought little of it, telling myself I was reading too much into a small oversight. Then I saw the calendar. It hung on the wall above the kitchen sink. The date of today was circled, a thick black marker line around a number, neat but deliberate. I froze, staring. I could not explain why it made my stomach tighten. The house was supposed to be mine for the next 2 nights. No neighbors, quiet. The calendar felt intentional, like someone had marked it just for me. I tried to dismiss it. I unpacked my bag, set out my clothes, and walked through the rooms. Upstairs had 2 bedrooms and a small bathroom. The floors creaked in the familiar way old houses do. The windows were closed, the blinds drawn. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, trying to enjoy the fading light, the way it fell on the fields outside. The farmhouse was on a small rise, surrounded by tall grass and a few skeletal trees. The wind whispered across the land, brushing against the house in soft waves. Night came quickly. I turned off the lights and tried to sleep. Hours passed slowly. Around 1 in the morning, I heard it. A drawer opening downstairs. Not a creak, not a groan of the wood settling. Clean, sharp sound, followed by another drawer, closing. I sat up, listening. The living room, the kitchen, the front door, all silent again. I tried to tell myself it was the house settling. Old houses move in odd ways. That was what I repeated over and over. The sounds came again, softer this time, as if someone were testing the space, opening cabinets, moving lightly. I held my breath, afraid to make a sound, but the house returned to silence. I did not sleep much after that. Morning felt heavy. I moved slowly, telling myself the sunlight made everything normal again. I went to brush my teeth. When I grabbed my toothbrush, it was wet. Not damp from humidity, not from a spill in the bathroom. Wet as if someone had used it, rinsed it, and left it there. My hands shook slightly. I dropped it back into the cup. I did not want to inspect further. I packed my things as quickly as I could, moving quietly, careful not to leave anything behind that could be touched or tampered with again. I checked the rooms one last time, glanced at the calendar, still circled. I left without unlocking the door, slipped out to the porch and walked down the gravel lane. The house sat behind me, quiet, still, sun rising over the fields. I did not look back, not more than a quick glance, not enough to examine details, only enough to confirm the structure was unchanged. Later, when I checked my phone, I saw the message from the host. The tone was polite but confused. Why had I left early? No one had been in the house for weeks, they said. No cleaners, no neighbors. The milk, the sandwich, the wet toothbrush, the circled date on the calendar. It could not have been left by anyone recently, according to them. I scrolled back through the listing. The calendar was never mentioned. No pictures of it, no hint that it existed. Everything in the listing suggested solitude, emptiness, privacy. I thought through what must have happened. The house was not abandoned, not in the sense of being empty, but someone had been there before me, recently enough to leave perishable food and a wet toothbrush. The circled date was deliberate, meant to be noticed. The sounds at night could not be explained by the house itself. They were precise, like someone testing the space. Nothing supernatural, nothing fanciful. Someone had accessed the farmhouse, left signs, and disappeared. Whether the person had intended to return or was just observing, I could not know. The house, the calendar, the food, all pointed to a human presence, timed and calculated. I never returned. I stopped checking the area for other listings, stopped looking for rentals in remote houses. I realized how vulnerable a person can be in a space meant for privacy. The farmhouse remained behind, quiet and still, but the memory of it was sharp. Every detail, from the circled date to the wet toothbrush, remained fixed in my mind, proof of something real and human, something that did not belong but had been there nonetheless. I left the farmhouse knowing I had escaped a situation I could not fully explain, and in doing so, the story had a simple, clear resolution. I walked away. The house remained, the calendar remained, but I never returned, and nothing else happened. The danger ended when I left. I booked the place because I needed somewhere quiet and simple for a few nights. I was between jobs, between cities, and the studio showed up near the top of the search results. The photos were clean and bright. White walls, pale wood floors, a low bed pushed against a concrete accent wall. One window looking out over rooftops I did not recognize. The description focused on privacy, modern design, and contactless entry. I had never been to that city before and did not know anyone there. I wanted something that felt neutral and forgettable. Check-in was late afternoon. The building sat on a narrow street with mixed storefronts on the ground level and apartments above. Nothing stood out. No sign, just a metal door with a keypad. Inside, the hallway smelled like fresh paint and dust. The studio was on the 3rd floor. When I unlocked the door, the place looked exactly like the photos. Almost too exact. No personal items. No books. No art. The kitchen had 2 plates, 2 glasses, and a single pan hung on a hook. The bathroom was spotless. No hair in the drain. No marks on the mirror. The bed had white sheets tucked tight. No wrinkles, no creases. The space felt empty in a way I could not explain. Not unfinished. Not abandoned. Just cleared out. Like someone had removed anything that could suggest a person stayed there longer than a night. I set my bag down and walked through the room slowly. I always do that in a new place. I check doors and windows without thinking about it. The window locked fine. The bathroom door closed clean. The closet was empty except for hangers that all faced the same direction. The air was cool and dry. The only sound was traffic far below. That first night passed without trouble. I cooked nothing, ate takeout at the small table, and lay on the bed scrolling until I fell asleep. The ceiling light was bright, so I turned it off and used a small lamp near the window. When I shut that off too, the room went fully dark. No streetlight reached the window at that angle. Felt like sleeping in a box. The second day, I spent most of my time outside. I walked neighborhoods I did not know, took the wrong buses, sat in a cafe for hours. When I came back that night, the studio felt colder. Not in temperature, in presence. I shook that off. New places often feel strange at night. I lay down around midnight. I turned off the lamp and waited for my eyes to adjust. That was when I noticed the reflection. At first it looked like a car passing outside, but it did not move. It sat high in the mirror across from the bed, faint and red, like a dot blurred by glass. I blinked and waited, stayed. I sat up. The red point did not change. It did not blink. It did not brighten. It was steady. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam washed over the mirror and the wall behind me. The red point vanished under the light. I turned the flashlight off. The red point came back. My heart rate climbed fast. I told myself it could be anything. A reflection from a nearby building. A small indicator from an appliance. I turned the flashlight on again and traced the angle of the reflection. The beam led upward, above the head of the bed, to a white plastic disc mounted to the ceiling. The smoke detector. I stood on the bed and held the phone close. The disc had a small dark circle in the center. Not a vent, not a test button, a lens. The red light came from inside it. Faint, deliberate. I stepped down and backed away until my shoulders touched the wall. I stood there breathing shallow, staring up at it. My thoughts moved fast but did not connect. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt before. Not watched in a dramatic sense. Measured. Recorded. I checked the rest of the room with the flashlight. The corners. The bathroom. The closet. I found nothing else. No wires. No blinking lights. No extra devices. Just the one above the bed, angled downward. I contacted the host through the app with shaking hands. I described what I saw. The response came back fast. The message explained that the device was inactive and installed for insurance reasons only. Said it was not recording. Said it was standard. I read the message over and over. My body did not calm. The explanation did not fit the light. It did not fit the placement. It did not fit the feeling in my chest. I did not sleep. I packed my bag slowly, careful not to rush, as if speed might trigger something. I kept the flashlight on the ceiling the entire time. I changed clothes without turning my back. I did not shower. I did not sit. I did not lie down again. Before I left, I opened the app and checked the listing. The photos were the same. The description was not. I scrolled through it twice. A line near the middle had been removed. I remembered it clearly because it had stood out when I booked. It mentioned a camera for security, listed as inactive, placed in the unit. That word was gone. The realization settled in heavy and slow. The edit time showed recent. After my message, I locked the door behind me and took the stairs 2 at a time. The hallway felt longer than before. The building was quiet. Outside, the street noise felt too loud, too open. I sat in my car for a few minutes before driving, hands tight on the wheel, eyes on the building. On the drive away, my mind replayed the nights in that room. The way the bed faced the mirror, the way the detector sat directly above where my head had been, the emptiness of the space, the lack of personal items, the perfect alignment of everything. I did not stop until I reached a rest area on the highway. I sat there as dawn came up, light spreading across the windshield. My hands stopped shaking. My thoughts slowed. Later that day, after I reached a different city and checked into a hotel, I reported the listing through the app. I included photos I had taken of the device. I included screenshots of the edited description. The response I received hours later said the case was under review. It said they took privacy seriously. I never heard anything after that. Weeks later, I checked the address again out of a need I could not explain. The listing was still active. The photos were still clean and bright. The description mentioned privacy and modern design. There was no mention of cameras. I did not leave a public review. I did not want to imagine someone dismissing it as paranoia. What stayed with me was not fear in the moment. It was the calm planning behind it, the placement, the explanation ready to send, the quick edit. I think about how many people slept under that ceiling without noticing the red light. How many never turned the lights off fully. How many assumed the mirror was just a mirror. I no longer book places that feel empty. I look for clutter now. Books, photos, signs of life. I bring tape to cover anything mounted above a bed. I check reflections before I sleep. That studio taught me something simple and permanent. Being alone does not always mean being unobserved. Sometimes it just means there is no one there to warn you. I booked the place because it was cheap and close to where I needed to work. The site was a long renovation job on the edge of town, and I did not want a long drive before sunrise. The listing showed a small house with fresh paint and basic furniture. The price was lower than anything else nearby. The description said the basement was locked and unused. That detail stood out, but I did not care. I only needed a bed, a shower, and a quiet place to sleep. I arrived in the early evening. The house sat on a narrow street with older homes packed close together. The yard was small and uneven. The front door opened into a living room that smelled faintly of dust and cleaning spray. Everything looked fine at first glance. The couch was stiff and clean. The kitchen had a few plates stacked in a neat row. The bedroom was at the back, with a bed pushed against the wall and a small window that faced the yard. The floor creaked under my steps, but that felt normal for a house that old. The door to the basement was off the kitchen. It was a solid wooden door painted white, with a latch near the top. I checked it without thinking. The latch was closed, and there was a padlock hanging from it. It looked old but solid. I moved on. That night, I ate quickly and went to bed early. I needed to be up before dawn. The house settled as it cooled, small sounds in the walls and pipes. I lay on my back listening, letting the quiet take over. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to a sound I could not place. I stayed still and listened. Came again, low and rough, from below the floor. It was coughing, not a dry throat sound. It was deep and wet, like something stuck in the chest. It lasted a few seconds, stopped, then came back. I sat up in bed. The sound was clear now. It came from directly under the bedroom from the basement. It was slow and strained. It sounded human. I waited for it to stop. It did not. It came in waves with pauses in between. I told myself it could be pipes, but pipes do not cough. I told myself it could be someone outside, but the sound came from below me, close and contained. I did not get out of bed. I stayed there with the covers pulled tight, listening. My heart beat hard enough that I felt it in my throat. The coughing went on for several minutes, then faded into a low shuffle, like movement on concrete. After that, there was nothing. I did not sleep again that night. When the alarm went off, the house felt different. The morning light showed the same clean room, but the quiet felt heavy. I moved slowly, listening for any sound. There was nothing. No movement. No noise from below. I went to the kitchen and stood near the basement door. I listened. I placed my ear against the wood. I heard nothing. I contacted the host through the app and described what I heard. I did not get a response. I waited while making coffee, checking the phone every few minutes. Nothing came in. Before leaving for work, I checked the basement door again. That was when I noticed the padlock was gone. The latch hung open, empty. There were no marks on the wood, no broken metal. The lock was simply not there. I stood there for a long time, staring at the open latch. The air coming from the gap under the door smelled stale and damp. I told myself I should leave it alone. I told myself it was not my problem. Then I reached for the handle and pulled. The door opened with a slow creak. The stairs led down into a dim space lit by a single bulb. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor, exposed beams. The walls were bare except for dark stains where moisture had soaked in over time. At the bottom of the stairs, to the left, there was a mattress on the floor. It was thin and bowed in the middle. A blanket lay on top of it, darkened with old stains. Near the mattress were food wrappers, empty cans, and a paper bag with grease marks. Plastic cup sat on a crate. Inside it was coffee. The surface was still warm. Steam rose faintly when I stepped closer. There was no one there. The space smelled like sweat and old fabric. The air felt used. I could tell someone had been there recently. Not days ago. Not hours ago. Recently. I backed up slowly and closed the door. My hands shook as I latched it. There was nothing to lock it with. I left the house without finishing my coffee. I did not go to work. I drove to a gas station and sat in the car, trying to steady my breathing. I reported the situation through the app with as much detail as I could manage. I included photos I had taken of the basement from the doorway, the mattress, the cup, the missing lock. Later that day, I received a response that explained the basement was not part of the rental and that a former guest must have broken in and stayed there without permission. The message claimed the host had no knowledge of anyone being there. That explanation did not fit what I saw. A former guest would have needed access. They would have needed to remove the lock without leaving damage. They would have needed to live below an active rental without being noticed. They would have needed to leave coffee warm just before I opened the door. I did not return to the house. I booked a motel near the work site and stayed there for the rest of the job. I slept poorly for days. Every sound felt close. Every cough in the distance made my chest tighten. The platform refunded part of my stay and said they would investigate. I never heard the outcome. Weeks later, I checked the listing again. The photos were unchanged. The description still mentioned the basement being locked and unused. There was no update, no warning, no note. I thought about the way the coughing sounded, how close it felt, how normal it was. Someone had been living under me while I slept. Not hiding completely, just existing, breathing, getting sick, drinking coffee. What stayed with me was not fear of being harmed. It was the idea that someone could be there without being acknowledged. That a space could be shared in that way without consent, without notice. That the structure of the house allowed it. That the system around it accepted an excuse without pressing further. I do not stay in basements anymore. I do not rent places with locked rooms I cannot access. I ask questions I did not ask before. I listen longer at night. That house was not haunted. It was occupied, and that was worse. I rented the room because it was cheap and close to where I needed to be for a week. I was attending a training course downtown and wanted somewhere simple. The listing said it was a private room in a shared house. The host lived upstairs. Quiet, polite. That was the wording. The photos showed a small bedroom with a single bed, a desk, and a window facing a fenced yard. Nothing personal on the walls. No clutter. The reviews were short and neutral, the kind people leave when nothing goes wrong. I arrived in the early evening. The house was older but well kept. Beige siding, narrow porch, a light on above the door that buzzed softly. The host opened the door and stepped aside without much expression. I followed inside. The air smelled faintly of laundry detergent and something metallic. The stairs to the upper floor were directly ahead. My room was down a short hallway to the left. The room looked like the photos. White walls, thin carpet, a bed pushed against the far wall with a gray blanket folded tight. A small desk under the window, a lamp, a closet with a sliding door that did not quite close all the way. The room felt stripped down, like it was meant to reset after each person left. No marks on the walls, no signs of wear. The outlet near the bed was slightly crooked, but I did not think about it at the time. The bathroom was shared, down the hall. Clean, no personal items left out. Everything felt controlled, quiet in a way that felt practiced. The first night passed without incident. I ate out, came back late and slept hard. I heard the host moving upstairs at some point, slow footsteps, a door closing. Nothing unusual. In the morning, the house was silent. I showered, dressed, and left early. By the third day, the routine felt set. I would leave before sunrise, return in the evening, heat something in the microwave, and retreat to the room. The host and I crossed paths a few times in the hallway. A nod, nothing more. The upstairs always sounded occupied, but I never heard a television or music. Just movement, chairs shifting, water running. On the fourth night, my phone battery was low. The outlet by the desk was already in use by the lamp, so I unplugged it and plugged in my charger. When I pushed the plug in, the outlet plate shifted. It was loose, hanging slightly away from the wall. I knelt down and pressed it back. It did not sit flush. The screw at the center was missing. I could see into the gap behind it, a dark line between the drywall and the electrical box. I should have left it alone. Instead, I reached for the edge and pulled the plate forward. Came off easily. Behind it, tucked into the space between the wall and the box, was a folded piece of paper. It was yellowed slightly, creased along the edges. I slid it out and unfolded it on the bed. It was a missing person flyer. The paper showed a photo at the top. A young woman, dark hair, a neutral expression like a driver's license photo. Underneath were details printed in block text. Name, age, last seen date. The date was 3 years earlier. The location listed matched the address of the house. The description mentioned the room, the downstairs room, the one with the window facing the fenced yard. The bed in the photo background was the same position. Same wall, same outlet visible near the headboard. My mouth went dry. I sat there staring at the paper, reading it again and again. The details did not change. The age, the height, the clothing last seen. The contact number at the bottom was smudged, like it had been handled many times. I looked around the room, the bed, the desk, the closet door that never closed right. Everything looked the same, but it felt altered, like the air had thickened. I imagined someone else sitting on that bed, charging their phone, sleeping under the same ceiling. I folded the paper and slid it back where I found it. Then I pulled it out again. I did not want it hidden. I wanted proof it existed. I held it in my hands and tried to slow my breathing. I left the room and went upstairs. The host was in the kitchen, standing at the counter. I held the folded paper out in front of me. I did not speak. I did not need to. The host looked at the paper, then at me. There was no surprise, no confusion, no movement to take it or explain it away. Just a flat stare that lasted too long. The kind of look that waits. I stood there for a few seconds that felt stretched thin. My chest tightened. I turned around and went back to the room without waiting for anything else. I packed fast. I did not fold my clothes. I shoved them into my bag, hands clumsy. I kept looking at the door, half expecting it to open. It did not. The house stayed quiet. No footsteps, no sound from upstairs. Before leaving, I took photos of the room. The outlet without the plate, the bed, the window. I took a photo of the flyer. My hands shook while I did it. I walked out the front door and did not look back. I sat in my car for a minute, breathing hard, then drove away. I checked into a hotel across town and slept with the lights on. The next day, I reported the listing. I sent the photos. I explained what I found. The response came later, formal and distant. They said they would look into it. They said safety was important. Nothing else happened. A week later, I searched the address online. I found an old news article about a woman reported missing. The photo matched the flyer. The article said she had been staying in a shared rental while looking for work. The investigation had gone cold. There were no updates. I checked the listing again. It was still active. Same photos, same description, private room, quiet home, polite host. I do not know why the flyer was hidden behind the outlet. I do not know who put it there or why it stayed. I do not know why the room looked exactly the same after 3 years. Cleaned, reset, ready. What I do know is that someone disappeared in that space, and the place continued to operate as if nothing happened. Guests came and went. Reviews accumulated. The house stayed quiet. I think about how easy it would be to miss something like that. A loose plate, a folded paper, one small detail that only shows itself if you need to charge your phone. I no longer rent rooms in shared houses. I do not trust quiet. I do not trust places that feel erased. When I sleep somewhere new, I look at the walls closely. I check outlets. I pay attention to what feels controlled. That listing is still there. People are still booking it. And that room is still being used, unchanged, like time never stopped inside it. I booked the Airbnb because it was the only place left near the job site. I had been assigned a short contract to inspect equipment at a closed factory outside a small town. Hotels were booked because of a college event. The listing showed a small detached garage apartment behind a main house. It was labeled as an entire place. Private entrance. No interaction with host. Quiet area. The reviews were good, mostly one-night stays from people passing through. I arrived in the late afternoon. The main house sat close to the road. The rental was behind it. A converted garage with new siding and a single window. A gravel driveway ran past the house to the back. The host's car was parked near the front. No other vehicles were visible. I parked beside the garage and unlocked the door using the keypad. Inside, the space was narrow but clean. A small kitchen along one wall, a bed at the far end, and a bathroom tucked behind a sliding door. Everything looked new. The floor was spotless. The bed was made tight. The air smelled like fresh paint and lemon cleaner. I felt relief. I dropped my bag and walked through slowly. On the counter sat a small black device plugged into the wall. I assumed it was a router. Next to it was a tablet mounted on a stand, screen dark. I did not touch it. The listing mentioned smart features but not details. I figured it controlled the lights or thermostat. The bathroom had clean towels and sealed soap. The trash can was empty. The shower was dry. It looked unused. I opened the fridge. Inside were 2 bottles of water and nothing else. Everything felt staged, like a model room. I left to get food and returned after dark. The area behind the house was quiet. No streetlights reached the driveway. The porch light on the garage turned on as I walked up. That surprised me. I assumed it was motion activated. I ate and sat on the bed scrolling on my phone. At some point, the tablet screen lit up. It showed a live camera view of the driveway. My car was visible. The angle was from above, likely mounted on the house. I felt a small spike of discomfort but told myself it was for security. Many places had exterior cameras. I noticed a small icon on the screen showing multiple feeds. I tapped it. The screen switched to a view of the inside of the garage apartment. My bed, my bag. The angle was high, near the ceiling corner. I stood up fast and looked around. I found the camera. It was small, white, tucked into the smoke detector housing. I unplugged the tablet. The screen went black. I covered the camera with a towel. My heart was racing. I checked the listing again. It mentioned exterior cameras for safety. Nothing about interior ones. I considered leaving, but it was late. I locked the door and windows. I pushed a chair against the door. I slept badly, waking often. In the morning, the towel was on the floor. The camera was uncovered. The tablet was plugged back in. The screen showed the driveway again. I stood still and tried to think clearly. Someone had entered while I slept. The door showed no damage. The keypad still worked. The chair was back where it started. I checked my bag. Nothing was missing. My phone showed no alerts. I looked at the time on the tablet. It showed a log of motion events. The timestamps were frequent, every hour through the night. I took photos of everything. The camera, the tablet, the log. I packed quickly. As I opened the door, I noticed something else. A thin seam in the wall near the bathroom, like a panel that did not belong. I pressed it. It moved slightly, then stopped. I did not open it. I left and drove to the factory early. I contacted support during my break and sent the photos. They canceled the stay and told me to leave immediately. They said the listing would be suspended. I checked into a motel that night. 2 days later, I received an update. The host claimed the camera was part of a security system and said it must have been activated by mistake. They denied entering the unit. A week later, a local news article appeared online. A homeowner had been arrested for installing hidden cameras inside short-term rentals and monitoring guests. The article mentioned a garage apartment behind a main house near the old factory road. It described a hidden access panel connecting the garage to the main house attic. The police report explained how the owner used the system to watch guests and enter when they slept, adjusting cameras and removing covers. The access panel allowed silent entry. The interior camera feed was routed through a tablet left in the unit. I recognized the place immediately. Support sent a final message confirming the listing was permanently removed. They offered credit. I did not use it. Since then, I only stay in hotels. I check smoke detectors everywhere. I cover anything that looks like it can see me. I still think about that towel on the floor and the quiet way someone moved through the room while I slept, confident that I would never wake up.